Sunday Ramble Episode 3. The Intersectionals will hack your door. Hey, it's Prince of Queens, and this is the third installment of my little thing where I just ramble on a Sunday and try to talk about three different things that are maybe interesting, and it's kind of like hanging out with me in person because I can kind of actually just monologue on my own. I can do that if you ever hang out with me. I'm not necessarily, this is not that I'm taking applications for people to get to hang out with me a bunch, because I will probably say, no, I'm busy, sorry. Nothing personal against people who invite me, but I'm actually quite a busy person. That being said, one of the things I'm busy with is this thing that I do every Friday with some other guys called the Gaytriarchy channel, the Gaytriarchy podcast. Maybe someday it will actually be a podcast. It's not exactly a podcast yet, but it hopefully will be. And one of the things that we were talking about is that in Canada, I guess on the census or whatever, they have a box that says other for gender now. That's a new thing. And we were talking about that, and we didn't really have anything particularly interesting to say at the time. I think I made a pretty funny joke, though, about how, there's going to be some people that are, okay, let's say you really are intersex or have a hermaphrodite condition. Like, let's say you really, really, really actually do have that thing, which is statistically extremely small. Far less than one in 1,000 people have legitimate hermaphrodite disorder thing going on. But if you do have that, you're going to look at this thing and you're going to have one of two reactions. Either you're going to say, oh, this is awesome. This checkbox on the census is super inclusive. I feel really, really glad about how inclusive it is, because it was so hard for me up until this point, and finally I have something that validates my problem as a hermaphrodite to check gender as other. I can do that. Yay! Or the person's going to say, oh, god damn it. Really? Other? I've been checking male or female my entire life, and now there's a little box. I'm supposed to be happy, and it's not just a bunch of intersectionals who are the ones that are responsible for this. I have to live with this. I have a vagina and a dick. And no, I can't actually have sex with myself. It's not actually all that cool. You trenders, man, ugh. But then they would begrudgingly check the other box. But it got me thinking later about this notion that the intersectionals are sitting around, trying to change these boxes and blah, 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 blah. And then I'm thinking to myself, wait, what is this data going to be used for? Because similarly, ContraPoints was talking about how there's very, very few non-binary people out there, and that there are even less than transgender people than binary transgender people, which is just not true. It's just not true. But I can see why maybe ContraPoints would say that, because there's no checkbox for other, right? But now there is. Now there's a convenient checkbox where people can officially register themselves as non-binary. And what does that mean? Well, what does that mean? For the most part, it's almost as if they are registering themselves as an official intersectional. I know it sounds a little wacky, sounds a little tinfoil hat, but hear me out. So I was talking to Brian from Honey Badger Radio, really cool guy. We were on air. You can go listen to this. And he was asking me, are non-binary people considered more oppressed than gays? And I was like, oh, please, are you kidding? I think that it's a prerequisite to be non-binary if you're an intersectional at this point. And he agreed. And I think that that's really, really true. I think that, when we have people like Michael Rowlands calling themselves non-binary, hey, I don't know what he is and what kind of conditions he has. I don't know what conditions that person has. Maybe they have an intersex condition. I don't know. But it does sort of seem like there's a certain political ideology that goes along with it, right? And so it's almost like some sort of, maybe the government in Canada legitimately wants to be able to tally just how many people they have in support of this political ideology that is best described as intersectionality, in a word. Like, if we had to come up with a name for the party, like the current incarnation of the party, you know what I mean? Some would call them the Empire, some would call them the commies, some would call them the feminists or whatever, but it's not, it has many different forms that it can take. The current incarnation of the party would be the Intersectionality Party, or the Intersectionals. I like calling them intersectionals. Adding the S to it really pisses them off. I don't know if I've ever mentioned this in one of my videos, but it's actually really, really funny. If you come across somebody on Facebook or social media or something, and they write some really long posts, like some status update that's, you know, some really virtue signaling thing about how they try to be allies to women of color and blah, 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 blah. And they, you know, they say that gay men should sit down and shut up and listen to the queer trans women of color because their voices are never heard and blah, 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 blah. The best way to fire back at that person, like, don't even acknowledge anything that they say. Just say, looks like we've got an intersectional. And then if they keep talking to you, say like, oh God, intersectionals always say that. You intersectionals, you're all the same. Because they don't understand that they are so collectivized that they can be, that their ideology can be referred to in the plural. Like, if you ever write intersectionals, it has a squiggly red line underneath it because it's not considered a word. And I'm, of course, a grammar anarchist. I like to mess with grammar a lot. You can obviously tell based on the way that I talk and, you know, the fact that I'm a playwright. We like to do such things. It's way more fun to talk like people actually speak, to speak like people actually spoke, to talk in real life. It's way more fun to do that. Sorry, do I sound completely crazy right now? Because I had some rather annoying stuff to happen to me in my personal life today that I'm just not going to talk about. But yeah, I'm a little bit, I am, to be perfectly honest. So yeah, doesn't it seem like maybe, for the most part, on account of the fact that it's not so hard for the government to probably keep track of the statistically extremely small amount of people that do have, you know, intersex type conditions, perhaps the other box on gender is just a sly way of gauging just how many intersectionals there are in the population of Canada. See what I'm saying? You get the point? Because nobody really has to say that. It's mostly people who are actively making this choice. It's like, how many people did we brainwash this year? I don't know. All right, the next thing that I was going to talk about is something called the August lock, I think. I saw an advertisement for it today. And it's basically, from what I can tell, look up the August lock. It's a computerized lock system on your door that hooks up to your cell phone, of all things, and automatically unlocks your door. Because reasons. Like, oh, what could possibly go wrong? It's like, dude, no, thanks. My key works just fine. This little piece of metal, you know, that is a inanimate object, doesn't have any electronics in it, works just fine. I'm fine with that. I like it. I get in and out of my house just fine. It's kind of annoying to have to put groceries on the ground sometimes, but not that annoying. Not that annoying. It's not so bad. Jeez, it's, I don't know. Like, I already mentioned this tinfoil hat thing that I get, slightly paranoid about certain things, but I don't really think that people, I don't know what type of crazy people are trying to actually think that that's going to be a profitable business, selling things that automatically open your door by way of your phone sending a signal to it. Who cares? Like, that's just not, like, what person is like, oh, that's cool, my house is gonna be pimped out, yo, I'm gonna do that. Like, what if your phone dies? I mean, maybe it still works, I don't know. It seems like such a horrifically bad idea in so many ways. And recently there was actually a controversy, I don't know if you guys heard about this, where, those electronic keys for hotel rooms that you have, it has the magnetic stripe, and I'm not sure, I think there's different varieties of them. Well, one of the companies that made them had their software hacked, and somebody made a master key, and it could open literally every hotel door in the entire system. Like, thousands and thousands of hotel doors could be open with a copy of one of these master keys, because every lock that company made could be opened by it, because it was just a code. And granted, supposedly it took them something like 10 years of trying to crack this code to see if they could do it, but it was possible. So, but now we're going to look at something that it's not even as, it's even more malleable than a magnetic card. It's a phone thing. Like, people can hack into phones all the time. It's super easy. Like, it's just so dumb that somebody would think that that it's a good idea. Like, it's so dumb that it just seems like it's like, just, is someone trying to get into our houses? Like, what do they want to, who wants to get in our houses? Are they trying to advertise this on YouTube, hoping that, like, YouTube personalities will be stupid enough to buy those things, and then they have easy access to YouTube personalities' homes? Is that what they're thinking? Because that's my tinfoil conspiracy theory. That's what I'm thinking about that. God damn it. You won't take me without a struggle. You will not take me by simply having me put a lock that you can hack at any moment on my door. I'm not that stupid. I might be kind of crazy sometimes, but I'm not that stupid. I don't really even drink anymore. Maybe when I was drinking. No. There's not. That would have never seemed like a good idea. It just does. It's not that convenient. There's nothing great about that invention. I don't think I have anything else to say about that. I wanted to. I can't enumerate on how dumb that is for very long and make it entertaining. So I'm just gonna move on. Last thing, I feel bad for people that get sucked into internet drama. Like, I really, really do. And man, the people really, really try very, very hard to get other people sucked into internet drama. Like, there's people that would say that I got sucked into internet drama over the past 4 or 5 months, but comparatively to how much I could have gotten in, no, then no. The answer is no. You're wrong. You're just so wrong. Like, there were people being like, come to Candy Mountain, Prince. Come to Candy Mountain. Come on, Prince. And I was like, where's Candy Mountain? And they're like, look at it. It's over there. And I'm like, wait, where? I can't see it. And they're like, walk over here and you can see it better. And so I walked over where they were and I looked at it and I was like, thanks, not interested. And then people said, well, you walked with them for 50 yards, and that means that you're into going to Candy Mountain. And it's like, no, it means that I got a glimpse of it. And I said, no, that's what happened. And I'm looking at, the drama stuff and these people. And, I think it's safe to say at this point that my prediction about my, the internet blood sports, the very first video that I made, I think I made it at the end of February, where I actually addressed it. And I think I was the first person who actually came out and made the prediction that people would all end up turning on each other and it would just become a gigantic mess and implode, starving piranha syndrome. I think I was the person who publicly said that first. And I mean, it's not like it's not like it was necessarily an original idea to imagine that people who were constantly in drama would, end up fighting with each other. But it seems to have at least officially happened to a certain degree. And now, granted, there's always going to be people that are into drama channel, like streaming. It's not like that's ever going to go away because it's the internet. But I feel bad for people that get sucked into it in a certain type of way. And this is where it becomes story time about myself. I used to kind of do that back in the mid 2000s. So well over 10 years ago, actually about 10 to 13 years ago, there was like a 3-year period when I got in a lot of internet drama, like a lot of internet drama with people I had never met in real life, had no interest in really meeting. It wasn't really about anything aside from the drama. But, okay, so here's the thing. I did get sucked into it. I will fully admit that I did, in my mid-20s. I let the stupid internet drama get the best of me because I kind of got addicted to it. Like, it was kind of like a rage thing where I felt like I was right, and if I wanted to prove that I was right, and I could do it, and other people found it entertaining, and then other people would jump in, and it just kept going and going and going, and it became, kind of a vicious circle. Eventually it stopped due to complicated circumstances. Well, I was banned from a forum. It was actually kind of funny how it stopped. After 3 years of arguing on this one message board, and these were crazy. Like, I was the most talked about person on that message board. Like, I kind of dominated it. People could not stop talking about me. And anytime I would post a thread, this is back when people would post a comment on a message board and like it wouldn't get any responses, or they were lucky if it got 10. Mine would always get like over 100, 200, 300, pretty much every time. And, yeah, they were very into talking about me, but they all said that they hated me except for, a handful of people who would actually vehemently defend me. I think that they got very into defending me, because I was always right. I mean, okay. And that's how I should, preface this notion that I got into these, arguments, because I was right with what I was saying. Like, there were a bunch of internet trolls, people that would admit to trolling people and just being there to be sarcastic and to stir the pot because they were bored and they didn't really have a lot to bring to the table. And I used that message board for very specific reasons. It had to do with music, and I started becoming annoyed with the way that the scene had gotten, for numerous reasons. Like, there were numerous it was one of these things where the scene had been cool in the late 90s and for a few years in the early 2000s, but by 2005 the people were just all awful, and I was annoyed with them, and I basically wanted to tell them that they were all awful and that they should either change or go somewhere else because I missed the way that the scene used to be, which ultimately now is like a completely immature attitude for me to have. It's like, yep, well, that's what happens. Things change. Social settings change. If you go to New York City, the coolest bar 1 month will be the least cool bar in a year, almost unanimously. Like, it has to be a really, really stellar bar to stay being the coolest bar for over a year straight. Like, it will be like this historic CBGB's kind of a thing if that happens. And it's like that, with internet message boards. So yeah, I basically was annoyed because this place changed. But the people that I was annoyed by, they really did suck. And they did say awful things all the time that, you know, I should have ultimately had a problem with. I just shouldn't have bothered to. Like, I should have just said, hey, you guys aren't cool, I don't like you anymore, and then been out. But instead, I was very insistent upon staying because I was like, I came here first. And that opened me up to all sorts of people thinking that they could best me. And so people would be like, you know what, you think you know everything, and you think that you're better than us, but you're not, you're nothing. And I was like, oh yeah? Well, first of all, I am better than you. I know more about this music, and I've been here longer. And second of all, if you want to throw insults, let's throw some insults. And that's how I got sucked in. Like, I really did do... I just got into the insulting, and it was... I would say 85% of the time it was people instigated fights with me. I would ignore them. Maybe I would hurt their friends' feelings or something. Like, I would embarrass their friends in front of, you know, a few thousand people. And then they would decide that they were going to be the person to finally take me down. Like, they were like, oh, that Prince, you know, he's such a jerk, but here I am. I'm going to be the one that's going to finally humiliate him. Hundreds and hundreds had that thought, and they all fell. And I would meet them in real life sometimes, and they'd be like, oh, I think that we fought on the internet. And I'd be like, oh, don't worry, I fight with everybody. I don't remember. Like, I don't. So that happened, and it's actually pretty funny how it ended. So I knew the girl that was the head of this message board. She was a very long-standing personal friend of mine. I wouldn't say particularly close, but we knew each other in person and had hung out a lot of times. Like, I knew her before she even created the message board for a while, like for years, and had hung out with her for very in-depth, in-person, many times. So it was going to be it was going to take a lot for her to ban me. But what kind of happened is that, like, people became so obsessed with talking about me and so obsessed with trying to play victim. Like, you know, I would hurt their feelings, and they would all write her messages trying to say that I was an icky, mean man. He hurt my feelings. And it's like, and she was actually pretty cool about having a sort of a free speech quality about the message board. Like, she didn't want people to do certain things, but people did them all the time anyway, and she just didn't really enforce the rules. So, like, you weren't supposed to threaten people, but people did. I imagine that when people were, like, obviously spamming weird shit, that would maybe get them banned. But, yeah, you know, she mostly was pretty cool. And so people would say, like, oh, Prince hurt my feelings, blah, blah, blah. And she'd be like, look, you probably said something pretty mean to him too. I don't have time for this. Leave me alone. But it happened so many dozens of times that these people would get butthurt and, like, not be able to deal with, you know, not be able to eat what they could dish. That finally she decided to make a poll. Should I ban Prince or not? And she said that I'm only going to do it if it's over 90% yes. And now, granted, the people who had the biggest problem with me were, like, total losers who actually have, like, multiple different accounts opened up on this board. Probably not any. I don't even think the board exists anymore. I think it just doesn't exist. But yeah, there were people who had multiple different accounts. Like, this one guy was an actual, no, more than one guy were stalkers on that, and they would stalk girls. So there were these, and I hated those guys. Like, those guys were my least favorite guys on that message board. Surprise, surprise. They, not because they would stalk girls. Like, it's not like I was white knighting for them necessarily. They just were always on those message board, that message board. They were always there. They were always posting every single day. And if there would be a good looking girl that would post a lot, then the guy would become very fascinated with her. And there was at least two guys who actually kind of stalked a few girls. One of them, I think, was really only stalking this one girl. But yeah, that those guys were awful, and I just hated them because they were awful. And so it was funny though, even after she made the thing and she said explicitly that unless it was over 90%, she wasn't going to ban me. Even after those people obviously voted with all of their different sock puppet accounts, there were a bunch of no's. People said no. It was more like around 80%. But some crap kept going, and then I had a falling out with this old friend of mine who it was long, but this old friend of mine who used to be kind of cool but didn't go on that message board anymore, and was friends with the girl who made it. Well, this other girl wrote her a message and was mad at me, and she started lying about me. She got mad at me. It's a really, really long story how this all worked out. But when that other girl finally turned on me, then then the person who owned the message board felt like it was permissible to ban me. And it wasn't actually fair, but I was glad, because I kind of backed myself into a corner where the only thing that was keeping me going on that stupid message board in my mid-20s, when I had so many other things going on, the only thing that kept me being on there was my pride. Like, I wanted to win the argument. I wanted to... I don't know what kind of... I actually did tell people that I would be happy if the board just ceased to exist, because of how bad it had become. And people were like, well, that's screwed up. And I was like, well, how about you stop being bad then? I don't have that. I can't imagine myself ever getting like that again at this point in my life. I think that was a very mid-20s kind of an attitude with me. But ultimately, I did get sucked into this weird pattern of keeping going with something because I was thinking I could get something out of it, when ultimately it's just never going to lead anywhere at all. Like, people say that there's no purpose in arguing on the internet, because even if you do, you're still retarded. Like, that's been the long saying that's been going on for a really, really long time. Meanwhile, that's a ridiculous statement, because I've been on the internet pretty much every day for about 21 years now. A lot, you know? And like, I use the internet. It's basically like making a phone call for me. So unless talking on the phone and arguing with somebody on the phone makes you automatically stupid, then that's a kind of a sweeping generalization. However, the people who go on the internet with the explicit purpose of getting into an argument just for the argument's sake, just because they're bored, not because they are particularly committed to the arguments, and especially when that got monetized by way of YouTube, there's no good way to end that at all. And God, I really am glad that I never was a part of that mentality. Like, if I could have made money by arguing in the way that I did last decade, and people were really, really glued to it, like, man, I would write a thread and like within a day or two, well over 100 responses, which was a big deal at that time because there wasn't as much web traffic, and it was, only maybe 1,000 people really actively using that message board, and most of the people would only go to the events section anyway. There's probably only a few hundred that would actually read the discussion forum. If I could have monetized that and collected money off of that, I probably would have taken it. And then I probably would have kept going. Probably would have. Yeah, probably would have. In my mid-20s. Yeah, I'm really, really lucky that didn't happen. I'm really, really lucky. So, hope that people grow out of their little phases, and that everybody who has mental problems, and that everybody who maybe does illegal things or might get hurt by you know, bad things that happen as a result of, I like if somebody gets swatted or something. I hope that this is a temporary phase and that you come out of it in the way that I did. Though I realize it's different than what happened with me. That's just my little brush with it. And that concludes this video.